There are astronauts, and there are euphonauts.
Warning. The following material may not be suitable for all audiences. Please listen responsibly.
Okay, welcome everyone to Euphanaut Radio Sunday night, KFNX, 1100 AM, Phoenix, Arizona. How are you? This is our flagship station. This is our second broadcast out of Phoenix. We are incredibly excited. We're talking about a huge market. We're talking about the 11th most popular market, a UFO town. This isn't strange to Phoenix. The Phoenix Lights put you guys on the map. You are the new guard. That's why we moved here. That's why we are supporting Phoenix. We are excited to be here, and we are really happy to be joined tonight by our guest, Mr. Charles James Hall, as we do another deep dive into the subset of ufology being abduction. Now, we've talked about abduction numerous times throughout the years on this program. We have people that have had tea parties on board crafts, a la Sheldon Neidl. We have had people that have had situations that you could describe almost similar to a rape scenario, like a Nadine Lilich, and everything in between. Throw in Kim Carlsbad, and you got about everything that you could talk about. We've done it all. This gentleman is unique. Why is he unique? He had a relationship with ETs while he was in the military. Haven't heard this one before. He's also wrote a group of books, a trilogy, I believe, that I think you're going to find very interesting. So we're having him later in the broadcast as our featured guest. We also have a great news update coming up from Mike Hollowell out of the UK. Really excited to be the only ufology program in the States having the British do the news for them. Why am I doing that? Because they do it really well. The Brits are doing an incredible job in ufology. I take my hat off to them, and I love working with them. So we give my hats off to them. We're going to give our hats off to UFO Matrix, and we love working with both of them. Coming up in a little bit at the top of the hour, we're going to have Mike Hollowell joining us. Now, what I wanted to talk to you about tonight, because it's so fitting, is my experience this week with MUFON, Oregon. Okay, John and I went down to the MUFON meeting this past Thursday, I believe it was. It was in Belmont, which is in a suburb or in the city of Portland. Great little neighborhood right near Hawthorne, which is one of my favorites. And this was a meeting that was designed for alien abductees to share their experiences. Okay? In a format, in a room with people that weren't going to come at them, challenge them. There was just a sharing meeting. It wasn't a support group, but it was a group of people that got together to listen. That's all you were supposed to do. You weren't supposed to judge. And we were there in even a different way. We were there to just see how they conducted meetings in general. Now let's get it on the record right now. The new guard, which is Euphanaut Radio, it's what we represent, which is activism, which is action-oriented activity moving forward towards disclosure, is not anti-MUFON in any way, shape, or form. We support MUFON. You go to MUFON's website, we're on the front page, okay? They're on the front page of our site, we're on the front page of their site. We support their efforts. Everyone knows I'm buddies with Alejandro, the ex-education director of MUFON. The point is this. At some point, all the data that MUFON is taking, and this is where at one point during the meeting, I could no longer be silent because I was challenged by some people in the room who had recognized me. I tried to stay pretty incognito for most of the hour that I was there. I believe it was 2 hours. Who knows? Maybe it was 3. People kept coming up to us afterwards, and I really thought that we had made some sort of impact on the meeting, which was good, and I'm glad because we're trying to represent something different. So here we are in this meeting, and we're listening to these abductees, and I'm getting 2 things through my head. I'm getting 2 themes. And finally, someone approached me and saw me in the room and said, hey, what do you think? You're that radio guy, right? Okay, well, yeah, here's what I'm seeing in this room if you really want to know. I'm seeing 2 things. I'm seeing confusion and fear. Confusion and fear. Okay, I'm not sure that a lot of people liked that. I'm not sure that a lot of people understood what I was talking about, but while we spoke, here's what I found out. There were people in that room that had experiences they couldn't understand, so they were scared. I get that, right? But then there were people in that room that also didn't believe that we should be in the know, that we should be allowed to know, on the need-to-know list, which I was dumbfounded with. That's where the sparks started flying, I think, at that point. Because for me, I wouldn't understand why someone would be in that meeting if you didn't support the fact that everybody in that room has a need to know. Everybody listening to this program has a need to know if there are crash saucers, if there are alien bodies in some military base that you paid for in the Nevada desert or in SoCal or one of these installations over at Wright Pat. Okay, you have a need to know. And anybody in that room that didn't feel that way, in my opinion, number one, what are you doing there, right? Why don't you go home and just watch an episode of The Simpsons, okay, and forget this whole thing. Forget this spiel because it's scary. I get it. And number two, my point is, what are you going to do about it? You're collecting this data. These people have had these experiences. What do you do with the data? Do you put it in a closet? Here's some data. We've got tons of data here. We took reports. Yes, this is what happened to you. You saw A, B, and C. And then what? You put it over here, and then what? That's what we're doing. We're doing something different. We're going to take this information, and we're going to force change. Is that scary? Yes. Does that startle some people? Absolutely. Will it ruffle some feathers? Indeed. That's the whole point, my friends. I know you're going to be really excited about this interview tonight with Charles James Hall for the following reasons. I've never had a person on that has had a relationship, not an abduction, a relationship with a group of extraterrestrials while working in the military and being involved in that. So I think it's very timely and interesting. And with what's happened this week and the MUFON meeting we went to, okay, my guest tonight, let's get right into it. We've got a lot of cool stuff to talk about here. My guest tonight, Charles James Hall, not only is he a veteran and a person who served in our military, but he's a gentleman who's had an amazing experience with a group of extraterrestrials. Now, Charles, I think the best way to start this, because there's a lot to get through in a very short period of time. First of all, welcome to the program. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm fine, and thank you so much for having me. Marie and I love the Phoenix area. By the way, we'll be taking a 2-week vacation in Scottsdale and Phoenix here in June, and we like to vacation there every year.
Well, good for you, because, you know, there's something about Arizona, besides the Sedona part. It's just that the people in Phoenix, the people in Arizona get it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, and we love Sedona as well, and the canyon. The first time I was in Arizona was in 1963, and we've loved it all the time. Our whole life.
Well, let's get into your background a little bit. So tell us about who Charles James Hall was when this first started, when you first had your first experience with an extraterrestrial group, and we'll get into how that happened. But you were actually in the military when this went down, correct?
That is correct. I enlisted in the Air Force in July 20th, 1964, and I did my basic training at Lackland, and I was trained as a weather observer at Chanute Air Force Base, Illinois, and stationed at Nellis. I arrived at Nellis in early March of 1965, and as a weather observer, it was my duty to. Each weather observer took his turn at that time, doing 6 weeks TDY up at the Indian Springs Gunnery Ranges. Indian Springs is northwest of Las Vegas, Nevada, and it's the back door to Area 51. And up in there, when you're physically in Indian Springs on the main highway, Indian Springs, Nevada, and you're looking north up the valley, I discovered that those mountains at the northern end of the valley, which are 40, 45 miles up there, that there was a base for aliens, that the U.S. Air Force had a base up in there, in Area 53 and 54, for aliens who were tall and white. And it's so secret, that it's even in 65, that it was so secret that, if you went up there and you weren't supposed to be there, you probably wouldn't come back alive.
Now, when you say Area 50, there's Area 51, which everyone knows about, right?
Yeah, that's
and then there's 53 and 54 you're talking about?
Yeah. Area 51 is only Groom Lake, and Area 52 is only Papoose Lake. But Area 53 and 54 is the original Dreamland, and the northern half of Indian Springs Valley all up in there, over in Dogbone Lake and up in there when you look at it on the map. That's dreamland. Those are areas 53 and 54.
So where would S4 be located?
Area S4 would be. But incidentally, I'm getting a little feedback, and it doesn't bother me. But I just thought I'd let you know.
Okay, thank you.
S4, to get to S4, you go up the Indian Springs Valley. You go up straight up Indian Springs Valley, and then when you get to the very end of the valley where the mountains are, the road makes a Y, and you go to the left on the Y, and head up back towards the northwest, towards Area 51, and see that whole thing is inside the Area 51 outer perimeter. And S4 is way up in there in the mountains, but S4 is not the base. The base is in Area 53 and 54, which is inside Area 51. And my clearance allowed me to go up in there anytime I wanted, day or night. The only requirement was that anytime I went up there, I had to be totally alone. If I took anyone else with me, I wouldn't have been in any trouble. But whoever I took with me wouldn't have come back alive.
Let's. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you didn't do that. At the same time, I might have volunteered. But let me ask you.
Area 54 includes Dogbone Lake, by the way.
Okay. What kind of clearance level are we talking about, Charles, and how did you get that kind of clearance?
The clearance level is hide in plain sight, the highest of all clearance levels. It's above top secret. The base up in there, I was never actually part of a project. Remember, as a weather observer, weather information is never classified, even in the Korean War. The Chinese and the North Koreans exchanged hourly weather reports with the Americans all through the Korean War. So, and as a weather observer, I was never part of a project. Like I wasn't briefed, I wasn't debriefed. I wasn't asked to reverse engineer anything. I was just told to be a weather observer and just go up the valley every morning, Monday through Friday, release a balloon 5 times a day, and I'll take the winds and call Nellis. Of course, when you're doing it out there in the valley, in the middle of that classified area, you draw a lot of attention because all the guys up in the mountains can see, all the aliens can see, and they have men, women, and children, and you're out there with pretty balloons, and they get bored, so the kids won't come and play, and the parents will bring them. And see, now my clearance was a joint decision by the aliens and the American generals, so that nothing I did was ever classified. In fact, because I was out there by myself, the only person that would know what happened was me, and therefore there wouldn't be, in order to figure out what happened, you'd have to ask me, and of course I'd be the guy that knew whether or not it was, what was.
Sure. But let's go back to the first time you encountered, or that you decided or found out that there was some sort of activity going on that wasn't terrestrial based, let's just say. Okay, what was it like? Give me the granular first time that happened.
That's what I'm trying to capture in my books, is how it felt to live that day by day. Because you see, it took me more than 6 months to get to where I could accept that it wasn't me. For 6 months, I lived in terror. I thought I was nuts. There were days that I thought. There were days I was in total denial, and it took me more than 6 months to get to where I decided to that place that you're asking about, and that place is described in Book 2 in the chapter entitled "The Journey." The night that I was out at Range 3, and I finally decided that the aliens that I was seeing who were coming to where I was, that they were real. That even though they had suits and they could float and they obviously weren't human. Where I finally decided that no matter what, it wasn't me. Whatever I was looking at was real.
So you were sort of testing your sanity at that point. You were in
there were weeks where if you'd come to me and said, "Charlie, you're nuts, and we have the cure," I'd have said, "Oh, thank God." I was starting to think these guys were real. The way they opened up the door in my weather shack the other night and just walked right in. I can't seem to open the door. Right now, I know I can't open the door with my mind, so I was just wondering how that happened.
Absolutely. And I'm painting a picture here for the audience. Is that here's a gentleman, like you said, you're spending a lot of time by yourself with a high-level clearance on probably the most top-secret base in possibly the entire world, correct?
You're easily correct.
The new guard. That's why we moved here. That's why we are supporting Phoenix. We are excited to be here, and we are really happy to be joined tonight by our guest, Mr. Charles James Hall, as we do another deep dive into the subset of ufology being abduction. Now, we've talked about abduction numerous times throughout the years on this program. We have people that have had tea parties on board crafts, a la Sheldon Neidl. We have had people that have had situations that are interesting. So we're having him later in the broadcast as our featured guest. We also have a great news update coming up from Mike Hollowell out of the UK. Really excited to be the only ufology program in the States having the British do the news for them. Why am I doing that? Because they do it really well. The Brits are doing an incredible job in ufology. I take my hat off to them, and I love working with them. So we give my hats off to them. We're going to give our hats off to UFO. You could describe almost similar to a rape scenario, like a Nadine Lilich, and everything in between. Throw in Kim Carlsbad, and you got about everything that you could talk about. We've done it all. This gentleman is unique. Why is he unique? He had a relationship with ETs while he was in the military. Haven't heard this one before. He's also wrote a group of books, a trilogy, I believe, that I think you're going to find very interesting. Okay, welcome everyone to Ufonaut Radio Sunday night, KFNX, 1100 a.m., Phoenix, Arizona. How are you? This is our flagship station. This is our second broadcast out of Phoenix. We are incredibly excited. We're talking about a huge market. We're talking about the 11th most popular market, a UFO town. This isn't strange to Phoenix. The Phoenix Lights put you guys on the map. You are the...
There are astronauts, and there are ufonauts.
Warning.